What's going on, everyone? In this video, I'm going to be breaking down why most online businesses fail and what you can do to avoid those mistakes in 2025, right? And I'm going to structure this video in three different parts. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is a little bit about the history and what's happened in this online info coaching market in the past 6 or 7 years that at least I've witnessed myself and what I can share from my experience. Then we'll shift a little bit into the present about what's working actively right now, what things you can do to adopt. And then 3, we'll talk a little bit about the future, where this market's heading and what you can do to best be prepared for that to be able to maximize when the right opportunity strikes. So diving right into it, the first thing I want to talk about is the level of success rate in the online business space is a lot lower than most people think, right? Now, success can be quantified in different ways, but statistically, over the last 5 or 6 years, for almost every 1,000 online business that's formed, there's only about 20 to 25% or so that make it past year 3. And of those, there's even a smaller percentage that makes it to 7 figures. And then there's a smaller percentage of that goes to 8 figures. And I share this because I think there's a lot of, false information out there that showcases that, getting to 8 figures or $1 million plus per month is easily attainable, which, in one aspect depends relatively to who you are and how much experience you have. But it's a whole different world than what most people expect it to be. It's a completely different business from building a 7-figure business and an 8-figure business. And a lot of people take it very lightly. And I say that to preface because over the last 6 years that I've been in this space or so, the amount of businesses that I have seen do really well 1 or maybe 2 years and then fall off a cliff in just a matter of literally weeks is insane. Guys that were in this space that were producing $1 million a month with probably barely any team, barely any marketing, nothing really sufficient or special about these folks, but they were able to do such high numbers, weren't able to adapt or evolve as the market changed. And the baseline of this video is that just like, there's cycles in the financial market, there's bull runs, there's bear runs, and, it's the same thing in business and when it comes to marketing and sales. Customers will shift, markets will change depending on advancements. What's happened in the past usually predicts what happens in the future, or usually is the future is a byproduct of what's happened in the past. So it's very crucial we talk about what's happened over these last several years to understand the scope of what it takes to actually last in the online business space versus really any other business, right? It applies the same thing, right? The only difference with the online business space compared to a traditional business, right? Let's just take like a construction company, for example, is that like online businesses are very fast moving. You have to move in sprints because there's new advancements, there's new strategies. So you have to move very fast. And if you're not able to move fast enough, you're going to get left behind. You're going to start declining. That's just the nature of the game. Whereas if you take like a construction business, it'll probably have, a slower growth to hit those quantifiable numbers like $1 million a month in profit. However, it compounds year over year. And after a long enough period, 10 or 15 years, again, if you can stay in the game, most businesses don't even last that long. You can have a really successful business, but the market really doesn't change as fast as for an industry like construction versus online, right? And so we have to understand what game we're playing first and how to go about playing it the best way, right? And the part of the reason why, again, most of these businesses that were doing so well at one point collapsed is they just weren't prepared for that time, right? And most of the time, I mentioned this in a post, but these guys were probably, most of the time just, quite frankly, just lucky. And what I mean by that is they were in the right place at the right time, just doing the right thing. And, they probably had a good product market fit, offer was okay, and boom, they were really just selling like hotcakes. Nothing essential to them, right? As far as what you see in today's market with the different advancements and different sales processes, complex funnels, and all of that, there wasn't really much of that. And this is me referring to back to like from 2018 to about 2020 to 2022-ish. And, most of them, usually didn't take that time. And I'm a firm believer that like almost every business kind of has its like lucky break, where sometimes you maybe don't expect like an ad campaign to do well and it's the best ad campaign you ever, performed, or you don't expect like a certain feature to be a breakthrough moment, but that's going to be the thing that takes a business forward. But that luck comes in the form of fashion of you continuously just working towards making something better. And eventually you'll just have that one grand thing that outshines all of the other dots and shots that you kind of took up, right? Now, in those moments, when you're handed those moments, you want to use that opportunity to make sure that you can prepare for the next cycle, because there is going to be a cycle. That's for sure. It's just a matter of, are you prepared enough for that next cycle? And most businesses or most people in our space don't know that, or don't expect the cycle to change. They just expect that everything's going to be linearly going up to the right on that graph, right? Which just isn't the case in almost anything, right? So going a little bit, I know I touched probably a little bit about the past already, but I'm talking a little bit more in quadrants of like years that I've witnessed. I'll break them up into 3 different key kind of moments I've seen, right? So I'll put 2024 over here, or I'd say more so 2023 to 24. I'll put 2020 to 2022 here, and probably around 17 to 19 here, right? So, I've been in this space for a while. I've worked with had the privilege to work with a lot of great people, a lot of big names, and great coaches and influencers, really. And a lot of the time, our business is usually structured to work with people for a very long period of time. And so part of my job is to always figure out where the market's moving, to have that advantage to keep pushing the bar forward, right? And so in 2017, 2019, to give it to you guys pretty simply, it was, I'll be honest, just diabolical what you could do. I remember for one offer, they were doing about 12 million a year, and they had a run from 2017 to 2019 doing 12 million a year each year. And it was literally an offer posted on a Apple Notes screenshot, and people would message us via like Messenger or DMs. And back then, ManyChat or Instagram DMs weren't like a big thing, but it was a way to communicate. And we just honestly were sending that one note screenshot, and the offers were anywhere from like 3 to 5K plus. And that thing was just selling off of that. There was no salesperson. We just literally had a bunch of people inside of the DMs, not even that much, but in terms of headcount, but it was a pretty lean team. It was heavy content. Obviously the brand and credibility had a lot to do with it. But it was pretty insane to see that you could pull something off like that. Right. And we had some launches and stuff too, but even those launches, which are more so, I'd say, what we did more of throughout 2020 and 2022, which was, we do launches with, certain brands. And again, at this time, there wasn't, 2 things to note is between 2017 to, I'd say, pre-2020, there wasn't much saturation. There was like probably a few big names in each niche or market, and they were controlling it. There wasn't many people that were jumping into content creation like they are today. The market's just wildly different in terms of who owned it and who's in it as a consumer. And in 2020, that's when COVID struck. So there was an outbreak, and these people who already controlled the market were able to take up even more market share. And I would say that was probably the moment when I noticed a lot more people started coming in and saturating it, but it wasn't enough to kind of dilute the market. And so we were working with a few people, and I wouldn't say we created launches. Launches have been around since ever, but we just brought it into a market that was under leveraging them. And we were able to do like anywhere from $1 million to $3 million on a launch. I'll probably put some screenshots up here to showcase that. But it was insane. Like the conversion rates were nuts. We had no sales people involved whatsoever, like no sales process, probably like follow-up people answering emails and stuff like that. But it was just insane what you could do. Like what I could categorize this market from 2017 to 2022 is that there was just like an easy button all the way through, right? If you knew what you were doing, you had credibility, and you owned a piece of the market, you could do some really big numbers. What I noticed was after 2022, there was a significant downturn in events. And there was a lot of people in between this whole period leading up to here that I can probably count on all my fingers aren't around today, which is just insane to say, but goes back to that stat we talked about here, right? That being said, if we look at 2023, that's when I noticed the first, again, downturn in conversion rates. It became a lot tougher to do launches. Strategies and everything needed to be a little bit more thought out. Positioning needed to be a little bit more thought out. It was that first period that I noticed that, okay, this is that cycle that things are about to change. And honestly, what happened during 2023 is I think the market that got sold to during this period here, a lot of the businesses in the space, probably didn't do well enough job serving those people in that market, and they got more so burned, if you want to call it. And the level of trust just went down really bad. On the other side, as that trust went down of the average consumer, people were buying less also because the market economically, people had less money by this time because of COVID, inflation was hitting. It was just really bad in terms of the trade-offs most people had to make, right? COVID was over. Most people couldn't work from home anymore. So that was a constraint that people, had. Money was tighter, and trust was lower. And then on the reverse side of that, the market of business owners and creators went up, which is a good thing for the creator economy, you can say. But what happened is, because that market that was owned by these, few dominant kind of brands in this moment from these years, they weren't able to keep up with the new saturation that came in, right? 2024, I think, was more so the year that the creator economy exploded, per se. I think 2023 was the first edge towards it. But 2024, I think, is when we've seen an outbreak, and TikTok was, getting really dominant in terms of how many creators were stepping in. This idea that you can make money online just became more glamorized than ever, and the slice of the pie just got thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. And when you combine those two, which are like kind of like polar opposites of each other, it became very tough last year for people to sell. And don't get me wrong, there were still plenty of brands that I know firsthand, some that we work with, that were able to sustain and, really do better than most because they were more so part of that 1% of the market, right? They were able to kind of withstand the storms in between these last few years, were able to do the right things, set up the right stuff and the foundations to excel in these moments. The brands that couldn't do the best and had to suffer because of all the competition and saturation coming in were the ones that didn't really prioritize saying pivoting or shifting their business model. We had people we were working with that were against pivoting, against a launch model, because it was working. And, fair, but when you notice a decline over and over again, that's usually, a sign to start thinking about the future. And because that pivot wasn't, really accomplished by most brands, they suffered a lot. They suffered market share, they suffered revenue. They had to do a lot of stuff out of the ordinary to still make the same amount of money they were making before, if not lower. But that 1% still kind of got out of there, and we're doing pretty well, right? So let's talk about that 1%, right? And more so the brands that were killing it in 2024. Like, what was their secret, or I guess what was working for them? So I think there was a few models that were adopted more heavily in 2024. And I think with more saturation coming in, it was definitely more sales processes and complex sales processes that were built on the previous years, when I'd say sales processes were still around and still worked for a lot of people. But, you really didn't need to still produce a high volume if you had other factors like your own social media, right? If you were doing paid, it'd be a little bit different. I don't want to get into the details of it because then it'd get a little long of it. But basically, I'd say sales processes were more so adopted within 2024. They've been around for decades, right? But in the creator economy, let's just say specifically in the online business world, they became more glamorized, right? Now, it's a good thing and a bad thing, right? There's always two sides to the coin, is what I've learned. Good thing is that's an advancement towards like creating more, predictable processes around the business, which was the exact opposite of like a launch model, which was really profitable, but harder to be predictable with it, because there were more spontaneous, happened every once in a while than every month, right? On the other side, what I've noticed is, it became so hard for the market to sell into, because everyone saw, a lot of each other, and it's still happening right now in today's market, is that these sales processes were kind of taken by storm, where almost every single online business offer has it part of their arsenal, right? Again, good and a bad thing. But the bad thing, and what people aren't really noticing, is this is, again, one of those phases where this will probably work really well for the people that are in the top 1%, maybe even the people a little behind there. The further down you go, the pyramid, in terms of the brands that are doing the best or the most dominant, the harder it is to adopt this model, right? So if you're further down in the race and you're still catching up, or you're trying to adopt to a model like this, and not saying the model itself is flawed, but I think what's actually going on is because so many people are doing it, it's much harder for this person over here that already has all of these factors of friction and trade-offs to trust this, right? Now, what's something that someone that's trying to adopt sales processes now could do? And this is stuff that, all the stuff that I'm really sharing is stuff that we're actively doing across some of our partner clients. And, it's the way that you'll need to sell that's going to change, right? I think a lot of people's mindset with these sales processes, and again, I want to preface this because there's a lot of people in this space that I know of that have done really well in a very effective way for a long period of time. So those people know who they are. But a majority of people in this market are really pushing for that lead to close. And that's a pretty tough model to just go off, right? And what I mean by that is, let's take your ordinary funnel. There's people at the top of the funnel, there's people in the middle of the funnel, and there's people more so at the bottom. I'll put the B in between this, right? The difference between these people are maybe they're right on the fence to buy, versus these people are probably more proactive and ready to buy. I won't break down exactly structures of funnels in maybe this video. I'll probably make a whole separate video for this, and probably a lot of parts in this video. But the whole goal is, what people do is they, will usually, what I've noticed happen in 2024 is people will whip up an offer. They'll take it to market. They'll probably do like a big launch. And again, launches are, great in the moment because they create this hype, they create this FOMO, urgency, scarcity, and people want to be part of something big, right? And so you get this spike of sales right away, and that spike of sales, obviously stems from all the things that I mentioned, but it's more so these people that were already at the bottom of the funnel that were ready to purchase. And I'm referring to more so owned media here, guys that have their own brands. Paid media is a lot different for this scenario, but these are for more so people that are have organic presences, right? And so, that those people were ready to buy, and all you really did was just sell to all of those people, which is great in one sense because now you have this boost of cash flow, which is great, but then you also just empty the well, right? The level of water in your well went down to zero because you have barely anyone left here that's going to buy instantly. And so now you have to push a little bit harder. So you'll notice that more people start going, as they go up and up in the funnel, the leads that they're touching are harder and harder to sell. And that's where things can get a little out of hand, where you'll start making desperate measures, because what a lot of people misunderstand is that this average human here buys very differently. And again, this may require a whole different video, but there's different types of buyers. There are more immediate buyers, people that are ready to buy right away, people that probably need a little bit more review, that want to take a couple looks at it before they make a decision. And then you can put these guys in duration, I guess. There's people that will probably take months, if not a year, to make a decision if they want to buy something, right? And what a lot of people expect is that every single lead that hits their desk is an immediate buyer that's ready to buy right away. And that's just not the case. And so what usually happens is when you're pushing so hard up the funnel, you're working backwards in a way, because you're pushing up and your audience or prospects are pushing back, probably have more objections. Closing them becomes a lot harder. That's when that's a sign that you are jumping more so. You're trying to take someone that's in this stage over here or this stage over here, and you're trying to force them to become this person, which they're not. And what that's going to do as a flip is it's going to make those people scared and run away and not buy from you at all. So you lost a future customer by doing this. You've also probably tanked a lot of your brand's stock value and reputation, which is another thing that I think a lot of online businesses do, is they sacrifice their reputation or do things in ways that they're not able to come back from, right? The one great part about the online business space is you can make a lot of money really fast in a short period of time. And if you take a lot of shortcuts in the way, or if you do things that are a little bit more edgy, or things that are more, I would say, one door scenarios where you can only go through it once and you can't come back from, it's very hard to pivot into any future business that you'd like to, or it can affect your ability to do so. And so again, this is probably a whole different topic, but the idea is that most people in our space right now, I think, are lacking a very deep understanding of how the human psychology works when it comes to buying. And like I said, we came from this market where it was a lot easy, and you didn't really probably need to pay attention to these things because you just hit this easy button and you can just print this money. But now the market's forcing the best over here at the 1%, because these are brands that are prioritizing these things to make sure that they can meet the buyer at the intersection of their interest, right? This is where the sale happens. Most other people are just trying to clash heads. Most other brands or online businesses are clashing heads with their customers because they're trying to force people down this funnel. And they're kind of just pushing that iron down their throats. And again, you'll make money by probably persuading or, sometimes manipulating even those people to buy. But again, it'll be a lot of second order consequences that you don't see coming. That being said, a lot of those businesses that are winning or are going to win are the ones that recognize that Everyone buys differently. And in order for us to win, we have to meet the buyer when they're ready to purchase. And so diving a little bit deeper into this, there's two ways to classify this. There's push marketing and there's pull marketing. And what I just demonstrated to you guys is pull marketing over here, right? This is pull marketing, is when you are able to take a step back, when you're able to withdraw from having to shove an offer down someone's throats for them to purchase and letting them come to you, right? Whereas in a lot of people in the space right now, I'm noticing are playing this push game where they want to do big promos, big launches, webinars every other month, because those webinars are a big factor in their ability to produce sales, which again, nothing really wrong with either model. You could do the push model or pull model, but the ones that are going to be able to be the most effective are the ones that are doing the kind of different approach, if you were to say, right? If everyone's stuck here and everyone in the market is selling the same way, you do not want to be categorized in that same bucket of people. Whereas in a lot of people don't take this pull approach, which, you know, I'm more of a fan of, because it's more fun to have people come to you. It's a little bit more easier. It takes a little bit longer to nail, but when you get it right, that thing hums, and you're able to not only acquire customers in a very effective way, and don't have to be this hard selling kind of sleazy car salesman breath type of person, but you're able to now have market dominance, which again, not a lot of people in our space understand, but they're sacrificing a lot of things when they're doing this push marketing approach. Those whales that are doing the pull marketing approaches, that are letting customers come to them, and are able to meet them at the right intersection, are able to, in the long run, kind of grow their market presence, because they're able to do something that most of their ecosystem can't. And so that's, you know, a whole other topic that I'll probably get into, of how to go about this specifically, maybe in depth, and how to meet customers in that intersection and how to go about that. But that'll be, you know, basically us focusing on how do you maximize this middle portion that everyone else skips, right? Whereas everyone, again, right now is just jumping here to here. Now, we covered, back to this top, we covered the past, we covered the present. Let's talk a little bit about the future, right? Now, this is obviously going on right now in the market. Now, where is, you know, this online business space heading in the foreseeable future? I think there's going to be a very strange period over this 2025 year and 2026. And I think the road's going to meet the rubber in a more harsh way. And I don't mean to scare anyone about this or sound like, you know, negative towards it, but that's just the trend that we're on, where it's just going to get harder. There's only going to be more creators coming in. And if those creators and businesses keep selling the way they do, this is only going to keep going lower. There's going to be, you know, a lot of time required for this to flip. And, you know, we don't know when that will be. Point being, it's only going to get tougher to stay in this game and keep selling if you're, you know, have been in this space for a while. And one of the things that I think it's going to come down to is consumption and quality. The businesses that I believe are, you know, and so here's the other thing. Before I even get into these two things here, I want to talk about another part that's equally correlated, is that when we look at, you know, the businesses that, or let's take a recession as an example, right? Those guys that have money saved up and, you know, have hundreds of millions of dollars ready to deploy when a recession happens, they're basically cleaning up the blood off the streets, right? That's when they make the most money, is when everything's for sale. And we're probably already in that and going to go deeper into this recession kind of period. And that's where the best brands, the ones that do the above here, plus these two things that I mentioned here, right? And there's some other smaller components to things that can still keep you around, but I think it ultimately comes down to these two. But those brands will be able to go back to achieving that market dominance. If you look at that chart that we have here, where there was this people of, that own this market, there's going to be more market to own by the top performers. And they'll be able to pull the rug under the people that have been getting away with a lot of things up until now. And, that's honestly what it's going to come down to, where the best are going to push towards the top. And, a lot of bloody waters are going to be left for everyone else to kind of take a piece of the pie in the next foreseeable, I'd say at least 12 to 18 months, what we're going to see. Now, how do you counteract that? Well, kind of starts with what we just talked about here a little bit, this kind of strategy here, and implementing that in today. So you kind of plant that seed for the future. It's a whole other thing, but a lot of the other kind of problems I see is very short-term thinking, where you see someone trying to plant a seed, and a lot of people in the online business space try to see a result within 30 days. Like, no, this is something that you do today, but it helps you grow that tree 2 years from now. And these are very, again, mid to long-term approaches, but these are things that are going to keep you in the game longer. Now, consumption, I think one thing we can all recognize is 2024 in terms of content. A lot of people were able to go viral, blow up through content and produce a lot of quantity. However, I think because there's a lot of saturation in terms of quantity and people producing content, the people that are consuming this content kind of develop this palate that they know what's more diluted and what's actually going to be the good content, or the stuff that's a little bit more quality like. And so the market's getting wiser. They're noticing that, you probably noticed those videos of how I went from 0 to 1 million, or, the same styles of videos and stuff over and over again. And the style of the video is fine. It's obviously what's in that video and the quality of content within it, and how deep can you go about your niche or topic, right? To give an example, we're working with a few people that are ones that I consider black swans in the market. And the reason why I say that is because they're able to go into such a deep level in their topic that I would say majority of the market can't fathom or tap into. They kind of have this own market of themselves. And those brands are probably, ones that don't get the most attention. It's kind of like sometimes if you look at a TED Talk that's really valuable and doesn't get the most views, but it's actually real quality content, that's going to get favored more and more as we kind of progress. And so the bigger thing that we have to recognize here is that you want to be able to establish how are you really going to be different from the rest of the market. How do you stand out like that black sheep or black swan as compared to the rest? Because this ideal consumer here is, again, getting smarter with their buying decisions, and they're going to want to probably think twice before they make an investment of a high ticket size, right? And, the best way, I could put it to explain this a little bit further is that in terms of the edge within 2025, on top of this, and this is going to kind of bring it all together, is that you'll need to compete for economics, right? And what I mean by that is economics, basically the study of allocating resources. And when these people are deciding to invest in your business or offer or whatever it is, they're making a trade-off, right? And that trade-off is usually summed up into either time, money, or energy, right? And so the brands that are going to be able to dominate the most are going to be the ones that are able to take away the ability to really clarify these in their marketing or their offer and their approach. Meaning, for example, if we take time, one of the key things that most people, let's just say in the online business world, they're selling, freedom to do X, Y, Z. However, they're also asking a lot of upfront commitment from this average person here, right? And when you're doing that, you're creating this friction again, right? Where this person needs to feel that they'll be able to actually achieve this without it being too good to be true, or I guess falsely, ethically, I guess, selling a product that's not true to what people could actually achieve. But if you do it the right way, you'll need to kind of make that, establishment a bit easier. And what I mean by that is, let's just say there's some person, let's just say this guy, he's a single father, he's working a 9 to 5, he has to pick his kids up from school, has to do XYZ things. Like, the amount of commitment, even energy this person has, probably even resources this person has, are very low. And so when we're selling in this economy of like, you can achieve XYZ by doing this, but it usually, for you to achieve really anything, it's probably going to require some bit of commitment. So this goes back into you trying to figure out how you can make your fulfillment and offer better to make it in a way where it's a little bit more accessible to the average human, to not have that friction up against that, right? For example, let's just take an offer where it requires webinars and course material that you have to go through. There's friction for people to being like, well, I don't know if I actually have enough time or energy to do that because I'm stuck in my job, or stuck in the situation that's preventing them from doing that, or jumping into that investment or that offer. And that's the friction that's going to hold businesses back. So it's figuring out how to, again, throughout your whole business, because this isn't just sales and marketing at this point, it's figuring out how can, you position your sales and marketing in a way to address those objections. And usually you'll probably need to go back to the drawing board to fulfillment or your product or your service to make sure it can obviously comply and equal out to the stuff that you're sharing in your sales and marketing. And so, again, that's just one leg to this. But I'll share another example, and I'll leave it at that. I don't want to go too deep into this, really. I'll save that for another video if you guys are interested. But there's another thing here, right? So one objection that people have is, these offers created in our, space are sometimes a little bit hard to sell to our family members, right? Or these people's family members, right? Like, if you're jumping into something, like for myself, I was expected to go to college, get a degree, and become, in my situation, a pharmacist. But truth be told, that didn't happen. So I kind of had to change my identity. And, the tougher part was speaking to my family about that, and jumping into this agency and business and model that I was like, well, I'm going to take this marketing thing seriously, and I'm going to make this my thing, right? These people have the same objection, right? Where it's like they are in the identity crisis, where if let's just say an offer is too unrealistic, or if it's something really not look the best, frowned upon, in case of their friends or families, people care about what other people think about them socially, right? It's social accountability. And so if this person is being sold into an offer that they can't justify, I can take back to my family and friends, and they're going to give me that stamp of approval. That's going to be another objection you have to combat, right? And so this all kind of goes back up into a little bit of here, into the different type of people that need to buy. And because there's going to be probably less immediate buyers and more people here or here, you'll need to overcome these objections in a way that the other market isn't doing, in an ethical way, and also in a way that comes across more genuine and authentic than most of the industry right now. And that's going to be the harder part to crack. And that's going to be coming down to the way your copy and messaging is kind of relayed to the market. It'll also come down to how sales calls and your sales process is kind of oriented. How are your sales reps representing you as a brand, and are able to overcome these tougher objections that are a little bit more deeper, and they have to kind of peel back a few layers to actually unravel it. But the ones that do, again, will kind of be part of that 1% category, right? So I'll leave it at this for now. Let me know in the comments, whatever, I know this video probably went into so many different small directions that we had to pull out of, or else this video would have been very long. But I tried my best to capture most of this. So if this was helpful and you guys enjoyed it, let me know, and I'll be sure to be making more videos like this, going over stuff about the online business space, what's working, trends and stuff like that. But anything that caught your eye and you want me to go deeper into, just let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next video.